One of the things that I'm focusing on is what happened towards the end of the classic period. This period has entered the popular imagination as the classic Maya collapse. When people think of collapse, they think of an all-encompassing end and destruction of whatever had existed. But that does not accurately portray what happened. Yes, we see the end of divine kingship, we see the end of this massive construction program of these pyramids and temples. Populations most likely did decrease, but we see the continuation of the Maya language, Maya culture more broadly, the Maya religion. People didn't just disappear. The classic period socio-political system definitely underwent some severe transformations, but the Maya civilization and Maya people as a whole did not collapse. One thing that we see with Maya civilization, that we can see with civilizations around the world, these periods of increasing complexity and centralization, then decreasing complexity, decentralization. For the Maya, we see a couple of waves of this. The pre-classic period, when we had some of the largest sites ever, then we see a downturn in the climate, we see an increase in warfare, we see a decrease in resources, and we call this the late pre-classic collapse. And then we see the rise of the classic period city-states and the centralization and the flourishing of classic Maya civilization. For much of the classic period, we actually see a relatively stable climate. Populations grow tremendously during this period to the point where we think there were 7 to 11 million people. But after populations started to grow, you start to see internal strife occurring in a lot of these larger cities. Some of them are maybe getting a little bit beyond their carrying capacity. We know that some of the larger cities were actually importing food from neighboring areas by the end of the late classic period. We see an increase in warfare between city-states. Warfare had been a very common feature of Maya civilization, but it rises to a new level during the later classic period into the period that we call the terminal classic, a harbinger of the end. We see cities attacked to the point where they are abandoned. This was never really the case before. We don't see the destruction of cities in warfare. We see armies doing battle, captives being brought back to royal courts and displayed and sacrificed, but we rarely see the full-blown destruction of a settlement like we see during the terminal classic. Possibly starting in the 800s and 900s AD, we see drastic decreases in rainfall. Sometimes these decreases last 3 to 20 years, which is what gets into the realm of mega droughts. The weather patterns are such that a town could be experiencing a lot of rainfall, and 30 kilometers away there's no rain falling at all. And so if you have a society predicated on rainfall coming every year, certain amounts, and then you have far less than that over many, many years, you're not going to be able to support the same levels of population. People start competing for resources, and so you start to see a breakdown and transformation. We know that by the late classic period, you have a large noble class. You see divine kings making more nobles, giving people more power to help manage the fight with the neighboring city-state. And then those nobles end up fighting amongst themselves, destabilizing that city-state from within. With all these factors coming together to really necessitate a transformation of society. And a lot of this was related to people moving away from large population centers into smaller, less dense settlements to be able to survive and manage on a more interpersonal level. But we do not see a full-blown disappearance of Maya civilization. 500 years later, when the Spanish invade, people are still speaking Mayan languages. They're still writing with a system that was derived from the classic system. We actually, by that point, start to see an increase in complexity again. Who knows what would have happened if the Spanish had not invaded? There may have been another classic period level of centralization of power a couple of centuries after that. What we call the classic Maya collapse is actually a period of 200, 250 years. So we're talking 10, 15 generations potentially. People living in the 800s AD and may have started to see some changes going on around them, but they probably were not thinking to themselves, I'm living in the collapse. And if you look at 5,000 years of Maya civilization, yeah, a 200-year span might seem like a pretty sudden change, but living in it, you're not experiencing it as a collapse. And so that's another lesson for people living today who might see a lot of changes going on. People 500 years from now might look back and say, oh, the collapse of the 21st century. But pulling together bits of evidence from different parts, putting them together, we can start to think about what was going on in the deep past and how it's very similar to what's going on today in terms of day-to-day people's lives, but also very different. And each context, whether it's a temporal context or an environmental context, gives you an example of different ways that people have done things and potentially sparks different ways for us to think about challenges that we're facing today and what that can do in helping us survive deeper into the future.